I believe they were also the ones that first invented the ghetto as a place where all those of a different religion had to be in by night, by the gate closed, otherwise you were in trouble and stuff. And even in Germany, by the way, if you were Jewish in like 1820, I think it was Moses Mendelssohn, who was one of the greatest Jewish philosophers. In fact, there's Moses ben Maimon was a Jewish philosopher during the Middle Ages, and he was the one that influenced Thomas Aquinas. Also known as Maimonides. And he was a Jewish philosopher, doctor. He was actually the advisor to the Saladin, the head of the empire, who was Muslim at the time, and probably one of the ones who gave the Crusaders, or monks who were with them, that negotiated with him, actually, for Saladin, and he gave them copies of his works, which was another one of the ways that they brought Aristotelian thinking back into Europe. And I'm sure he was thinking of this as kind of like a computer virus that would eventually destroy Europe, because of course all the information that Aristotle offered was in contradiction to many of the beliefs of the church. So that's kind of cool. But he was a Jewish philosopher, and Moses Mendelssohn forget when it was, but at one point he went traveling and he visited Dresden. And when you traveled in Germany in different municipalities, some of them had rules that if you were Jewish, you had to be taxed as soon as you arrived. In fact, you had to wear some kind of a collar that warned everybody that you were Jewish. So he was infuriated by that treatment. But there's an expression, from Moses to Moses, there was no one like Moses. And that's because Moses, actually, we've got three Moseses. The first Moses would be Moses, the one who led them out of captivity, historically, right? And then you have Moses ben Maimon, and then you have Moses Mendelssohn. So it depends on which Moses you're talking about, I suppose, but they're very proud of Moses. All right. Michael Pretorius, he was the composer of music that I think would have been something Descartes would have heard at the time. And there's examples of it on the web, of course. So let's look at Descartes. So he grows up, 1596 is his birthday. Notice if we look at Thomas Hobbes, his birth date is 1588. So he would have been, what, 8 years old when Descartes was born. And if you notice, Descartes dies as only, I think 52, whereas Hobbes lived until he was 91. So you've got Hobbes, and in the middle you've got Descartes. an abbreviated life, because remember, Queen Christina got him sick. Don't blame Queen Christina. But Descartes, not really the healthiest child, so even while he was at school, he didn't get to play out in recess. They kept him inside so he wouldn't get sick. The story, they say, it's not my fault. But he grew up learning from Jesuits and Augustinians, and so he ended up having the basic knowledge that a young man, educated, rather wealthy young man, his family were interconnected with the bureaucracies in France. So his father and mother, I think, were both related to families that had upper middle class, if there is such a thing. But another thing to notice is that even though he was educated, he wasn't heading towards becoming a priest. He was becoming a bureaucrat, which is a brand new kind of work for people. You didn't really have much of that. If you were going to be educated, you were going to be a monk or a priest of some sort prior to this period. But now what we see, not just in France, but also in England, because Thomas Hobbes is in the same boat. He goes and he studies, and in fact Thomas Hobbes studies with a philosopher who's even prior to that, Francis Bacon. And Francis Bacon, notice, dies in 1621. Oh wait, that's office. Sorry. Where's this? Ah, there we go. 1626, age 65. But Thomas Hobbes was one of, not his official student, but he was a mentor to Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes did go to Mary Magdalene College, so he was educated in one of the only, there were two universities in England at the time. Thomas Hobbes went there. And notice, Francis Bacon was a civilian as well, not in the sense he was not a cleric, and yet very important as aide to the Queen, Queen Elizabeth. So very important in his office. I guess James the First. So that means Elizabeth had already died, right? She was the one that started the translation of the Bible. Martin Luther is the first one to officially translate the Bible into a vulgar language. Vulgar in the sense of common people, right? And that was into German. But meanwhile, there are folks that are trying to translate it into other languages, including English. And so when they find, and by the way, we have a manuscript in the library, in the big book section, the oversized section, right? That is a facsimile of one of the first translations of the Bible into English. But in any case, Francis, because the Gutenberg Press did the Bible, but it was in Latin. So that didn't help people that didn't have Latin as their basic language, that they could read. But with Francis Bacon, you have some really famous things. Remember, I think I mentioned with the Organon of Aristotle, the tool, Francis Bacon is the one that gives us the new tool, right, the Novum Organum, so the new logic, where he's focusing on inductive thinking. And he was doing experiments. In fact, what killed him was a particular experiment. He and a friend were in a carriage at night, and they traveled through a place that had snow, fresh snow falling. And he got out, and he went to a farmhouse and bought a chicken from the farmhouse, from the farm mother, the lady who you know, the wife, and had her pluck the chicken so that he had a fresh gutted, you know, chicken. And he went outside and he crammed the chicken full of snow instead of, you know, stuff. And what he was trying to see is if snow would preserve the flesh of the chicken longer than it normally would. In other words, they didn't have refrigerators or freezers, right? No relationship to Colonel Sanders, by the way. In any case, he got sick and died. So that's bad news. So that's how Francis Bacon. By the way, he's also famous. How many folks believe Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare? Oh. One person. Who was Shakespeare? That's the question. Who was Billy Wigglesworth? Yeah? Shakespeare? Shakespeare? No one knows Shakespeare?
I think everyone knows Shakespeare.
Yes? Okay.
I've considered looking into that topic of Francis Bacon being like the ghostwriter.
Some interesting, I'm a Baconist myself. Don't let that get around in the English department though. You know, they'll try to get you fired. It's just all kinds of interesting reasons. Did he actually, was he really Shakespeare, or was Shakespeare just his pen name for when he was fooling around and having a good time instead of being serious? Interesting question.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff about Bacon's life. I think he was part of a few like cultic secret societies or something.
I'm pretty sure. So was Descartes.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, Descartes was a spy for the Jesuits, according to A.C. Grayling. You read A.C. Grayling's book, Descartes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of sort of the, like I said, lives in the era, sort of like thinkers, part of the secret societies, and like, you know, the occults. And the occult was early known as the occult sciences by the church. You had Newton, you know, experimenting with alchemy and researching alchemy and sort of esotericism.
Well, what was the difference? Yeah. If you're trying to figure out where the borderline between science and alchemy was, astronomy, astrology, Galileo, by the way, it was against church law for you to use astrology charts to predict the future. But Pope Urban paid Galileo for his astrology charts. So Galileo was very good at coming up with astrology charts, you know, predicting your future based on the stars. Galileo did that as a side hustle, and the Pope bought his from him. So you know, the rules can be bent, especially if you're Pope. And Galileo.
Yeah, all Holy Roman emperors. The Holy Roman emperors had, you know, courts, or I guess.
Oh, yeah, chicken guts, you know, which way do the guts, you know, necromancy? Isn't that what it was called? You're looking at the guts of the dead body.
I don't think, I mean, depends. That sounds more like divination. Because I know is it the Romans, or I guess a lot of people did this, where they would, cut open the belly of animals and see how the guts spilled out.
Exactly. Okay. Well, this. Go ahead. Oh.
How do you even read that? You just like look at it.
Look. That's why they had shrooms. Okay, that's why they had shrooms. Schizophrenia and shrooms can do wonders. Okay.
Shrooms are mushrooms.
Oh.
Abbreviated. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend that put LSD in the bird bath.
What happened to the birds?
He left no turn unstoned.
I thought that was a real story.
That's a joke. No, that's just kidding.
He's gonna go home and put LSD in a bird bath now. Okay.
I have a friend.
Poor squirrels.
I have a friend, Bob Wald. Bob Wald is a retired psychiatrist. He will be 99 December 8th. 99. Still alive and tarp as a shack, actually. And he was in San Francisco where he taught graduate school, taught nurses about psychiatry, and he practiced with some of those who were experimenting with LSD in order, not LDS, that's something else,
Yeah. Very different.
very different. I learned that from a movie.
Which one?
That was Star Trek.